The Adventures of Batman with Robin, Boy Wonder. Batman and Robin, dynamic duo against crime and corruption, whose real identities as millionaire philanthropist Bruce Wayne and his young ward Dick Grayson are known only to Alfred, the faithful butler. Ever alert, they respond swiftly to a signal from the police, and moments later, from the secret Batcave deep beneath Wayne Manor, they roar out to protect life, limb, and property as Batman and Robin, Cape Crime Fighters. Batman and Robin, scourge of Gotham City's kooky criminals. The Joker, clown prince of crime. The Penguin, pudgy purveyor of perfidy. And the cool, cruel Mr. Freeze. Watch out, villains. Here come Batman and Robin.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and we're back with another look at the 1968 Filmation television series, The Adventures of Batman. And when I say we, I am joined on this journey through the series by the man himself from 13thdimension.com, Mr. Dan Greenfield. Hey, Dan.
Hey, John. The man himself. I love when you say that. I mean, it's just... it's just funny. Anyway, yes. Well, hi, everyone.
You could capture that and make that your ringtone.
I should. That's a great idea. The man himself. It's like something out of a 1950s like game show. And here, the man himself, Guy Smiley. Yeah. Hi, everyone.
So, I'll tell you, like we've been saying, the show is really hitting its stride, and these next two stories I really enjoyed.
Yeah, especially the Scarecrow one, which I know that we'll get to, because there's a lot to say. Even though it's a short, there's a lot to say because we're dealing with a villain that we haven't seen yet, and a villain who was, well, we'll talk. I don't want to spoil that conversation, but we've got the Penguin to start things off.
We got the Penguin to start things off. Let's get rolling on this one here. It's called The Crime Computer, aired November 9th, 1968, written again, Dennis Marks.
Yes, yeah, and he hits his marks in this one, too.
Yeah, he does.
The world's most impregnable bank vault on the 39th floor of the Gotham building, with concrete walls 7½ feet thick and a security system that is turned off once a day for exactly 32 seconds while a new combination is installed on the vault. Now, at the precise moment, the world's most impregnable bank vault is sucked dry with 2 seconds to spare. And who is responsible? The Penguin.
And I noticed this actually the last couple of episodes for the two-parters, is that we've just been getting Ted Knight narration while the villain is doing what they're doing. Like, they don't say a word.
Yeah. Yeah, we notice these things, and I never know what the reasoning is. Is it because they aired in order, but we don't know what the order that they were produced.
Right.
We aired in a certain order, so we don't know. And actually, by seeing them watching them in air date order, you see a lot of similarities from episode to episode. Like the constant introduction of professors here is kind of an interesting theme we've seen now for like 3 episodes in a row, or 3 of the 2 parters in a row. We don't necessarily know in terms of their structure whether it was because they hit into a certain writing style, whether they got into a pattern, whether there was a reason to do this because it was a way of saving time. But yeah, you do notice, you do pick up on similarities from episode to episode, and sometimes they do this, sometimes they do the other. But it does make things go faster because you're kind of seeing what's happening, and Ted Knight is kind of, giving the kids a little bit of a rundown.
It's funny because in doing these, I actually find that sometimes when I'm rewatching them just to go over my notes or anything, I don't actually pay attention to the screen. I just listen. And this is supposed to be a visual, but I still find I can follow the story easily without watching what's going on.
You really found that often the case in the Superman cartoons were a lot like that too, where you really did get a sense of, like, they told you a lot of what was happening. But that was also very much of its, also of its time. Again, we've drawn comparisons to both not only just the 1966 live action show, but like, say, the Bruce Timm cartoons of the 90s and aughts and all of that, where they didn't have narration. They were stories. They were like watching live action movies or TV shows. You didn't have narration. Here, that was very much part and parcel. But then that was also in comic books. There was a lot of narration in comic books too, and a lot of telling and not necessarily showing. That was very typical. Yeah. This is a really cool opening, and it's a neat idea that there's this impregnable vault. That there's a 32-second window every day where it is basically vulnerable. It's like this one little quirk that it's almost like the exhaust pipe in the Death Star. There's this tiny little thing that is possible, however unlikely, there's this tiny little thing that can be exploited. And so he brings in a blimp, which is awesome and it's not even a penguin-shaped blimp, which would have been cool, but it's a blimp, and this device that is able to, with 2 seconds to spare, cut through the wall and suck out all of the valuables with this gigantic transparent tube. And it's a really cool little special effect, and it's a very daring sequence. I mean, it's done very briefly, but I looked at it, I said, "Hey man, that's really cool. I like that. Good on you, Filmation."
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a great opening, but I thought what was even more interesting is then after the title, we get Batman and Robin talking this out with Gordon. And they're able to quickly deduce it's Penguin because, and I'm guessing most likely the other two are in jail because when they say Joker, Riddler, and it's like, nope. So I'm guessing they're in jail. But then it got me thinking, wait a minute. We've also got Freeze and Catwoman. They
never, ever explain it. They could have easily said it's Penguin because he left behind a feather or something. It was so weird that he goes, is this the Joker? And negative. And then he says, and not the Riddler. Now, Riddler, presumably, because there was no riddle, but they don't ever say any of that. They just quickly go check, and it must be the Penguin. And you're right. No other villain could possibly. I looked at that. I said, that's really strange. That's just messed up. But again, it's one of those cases where they're writing to little kids, and they're not necessarily thinking of the logic of it. And we're looking at it at, a couple of guys about 50 years old thinking, wait a minute. But they were just like, all right, let's keep it moving. They didn't have to mention the other villains at all, but they did. But what's interesting is that as we quickly come to find out, this is a rare two-parter at this point in the series that wasn't a team-up episode of villains. It's a straight, full-on Penguin episode.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But there was one line, because Batman says, this is more Penguin style. And I'm like thinking, is it really? I could easily see Riddler or Joker doing this.
Of course. It was just simply a way of getting from point A to point B. There was they didn't explain it. They didn't try to explain it. And they simply, this was, and the only thing I could think of in terms of what would be considered a style is that it was done by air. And that was, the Penguin does do a lot of things by air with his jet umbrellas and this, that, and the other thing. But again, I think we're overthinking it. I think it was just shorthand to get to the plot.
Now, funny you say this isn't a team-up, and yet then the next thing Batman says is, while it's Penguin style, the genius behind it is not him.
Right.
And you think it's going to be a team-up.
Yeah, right. And I wondered that, too. I thought, I remember as I'm watching him, because when we see the Penguin arrive at this cave and he knocks on the door of the cave, and I'm thinking, is it going to be Catwoman? Because Catwoman was often used as the Deus ex machina in some of these episodes. I was like, is it going to be? And I'm like, I don't remember this being a team up. And then sure enough, it's yet another professor. Yeah. Or actually, we don't know that yet. He goes in, of course, and we find this gigantic room-sized computer. And then we get this professor who is at least morally ambiguous professor.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he's been... Well, at first it seems like he's just duped, or maybe he's just in it for the money because Penguin slips him some money.
Right, he puts it in his pocket, like in a very suave way. Yeah. It's like here you go. Here, don't spend it all in one place, buddy. It's almost like he's in it, like at the maitre d'. Right. It's like this weird. Yeah, it is really funny, and again, he's one of these professors because they always show these guys to be like absent-minded and rumpled and bumbling in a way, but this guy seems to have ill intent, but it's not really defined.
No,
and the Penguin is just exploiting his work for his own gain. But yeah, he's got this gigantic computer that basically has a face that the that all of the lights and dials basically are designed like a big face, and of course it can talk. So the Penguin is able to converse with it.
Oh, computer! Plan and program a robbery utilizing your electromagnetic ray and include all Batman countermeasures.
Order acknowledged.
It's almost like the reverse of Fine Finney Finks, is it?
I think that's right, yeah.
The first Penguin episode from season 1 of the live action show, which is probably the best Penguin episode of them all. But again, the whole idea of setting it up so that Batman will plot the Penguin's crimes for him because of the way that the Penguin has things set up, excuse me, which is based on a comic book also. That's one of the cases of the show actually taking and adapting a comic book story which was Batman 169, I'm pretty sure, Partners in Plunder or Peril. Yeah, I think that was it. And it's and the 2/3 of the story are almost exactly the same. Yeah. And different endings. But it's this idea of the Penguin, and here instead of Batman inadvertently doing, he goes to this computer and says, okay, how do I do what's the crime? How do I do it? How do I take into account Batman? And at the time, it seemed, I'm sure, because this was 1968, fanciful. And again, we've talked about this, about where Batman 66's tech and also Star Trek's tech, which at the time seemed fanciful and wondrous, that came out. Of course, computers can't do exactly what the Penguin is asking them to do, but they can do a lot, and they can help pinpoint things, and they can help really research things in ways that then seemed completely bizarre or strange or over the top. That I'm looking at this and watching this episode, and I'm thinking, that's not that far off from what we can see computers do now. Of course, now it's a desktop versus a gigantic room. Right. But that's one of those things where you're seeing something that's very much of its time, and yet it also, in a weird way, is kind of prescient at the same time. Speaking of
The size of the computer and all, I got to make a quick comment. I love the way Filmation would draw computers in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime, we've talked about this too, the vehicles, their technology, the sounds that they make, that, all those, and they use the same sound effects. So you hear a lot of them over and over again. And the lighting that they would use, they were bright. And also, when they weren't moving, some of the matte paintings, people give, with Filmation, we talk a lot about the schlocky animation, and rightly so. I mean, it was done on the cheap. It was done very quickly. And that's part of its charm. But also, sometimes you see these images and these matte paintings that are really interesting. One of the artists on the show that's mentioned in the credits is a guy named Mike Ploog, for example. Mm-hmm. He went on to become, one of the major horror comics artists of the 1970s, and influenced, a generation of artists. It's like there's a lot of talent in play here. But it is also the brightness, the choice of colors, and all of that gives the show a sense of part of its excitement. That is frankly lost with all of the muted colors that you see in superheroes on screen now. Even in cartoons, they don't play necessarily with the bright color palette that you see in these old cartoons. And it's part of what I really love about them. We talked in the last episode about the Filmation shorts with the Flash and Hawkman and all of those guys, which are wonderful. I love those. I don't know when the last time you've watched any Aquaman. But the Aquaman Filmation, when you take a look at the entire 1960s output, that Aquaman animation really holds up. It really was the best that they did, not just in terms of the movement, which, again, they had their weirdness too, and the aliens were always strange, usually in a hilarious way. But the seascapes and the sea creatures and the colors and the dynamism of those cartoons are really, really striking, and they're really wonderful to watch. Batman wasn't as good looking as the Aquaman cartoons, but you did see these moments, and I know we've gotten way off the point here from the story itself, but we are talking about some of the core elements of the actual animation of Batman, the Filmation series, is that bright color palette, those matte paintings that really do make these very much fun to watch and very pleasing to the eye.
And I'm saying it again, and I keep meaning to send you some links so you can take a look. Fantastic Voyage from the 1960s.
Yeah,
God,
I really should.
Oh,
yeah, God. I really should.
Headquarters waters. CMDF, Combined Miniature Defense Force. Project Fantastic Voyage. Process Miniaturization. Authority Top Secret Highest Clearance. Team Jonathan Kidd, Commander. Guru, Master of Mysterious Powers. Erica Lane, Doctor, Biologist. Busby Birdwell, Scientist, Inventor, Builder of the Voyager. Mission, in their miniaturized form, to combat the unseen, unsuspected enemies of freedom. Time limit, 12 hours.
You know, and people think of the great cartoons of the 60s. They think of the Hanna-Barbera because of the Alex Toth influence and all of those characters. I'll always take Filmation over those simply because of the characters. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a DC guy, you know. And Marvel, of course, what Marvel was doing, I mean, we can go, you know, maybe someday we should do, like, maybe at the end of all of this, we should do, like, where does Batman 68 fit in with all of these other cartoons? So I don't want to get too far off the point. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was coming out at the time that was really quite striking in ways that is sometimes forgotten. And, you know, people remember guys like Doug Wildey and they remember Alex Toth. But the people who worked on this show, you know, they had chops too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, it's interesting because they set the Batcomputer to work on it, and it's not able to help them.
No, it's one case where Batman's technology is a step behind.
Yeah,
where he goes to the Batcomputer, but what this professor has built, Billingsley, I guess, is superior. It's actually superior, and it gives the Penguin a leg up. And it's one of those rare cases where, at least for the time being, he's got the upper hand.
Right. Exactly.
Strictly because of the technology, not because he's got a plot or whatever, but it's like, my tech's better than yours, which is something that you didn't usually see.
No, but I did like that, and I do like the fact that it's going to play throughout this whole thing, but not as much as I would have liked. We'll get into that. So, Penguin, his next crime is to use the electromagnetic ray that the professor has developed to lift the armored car off the ground and dump the money out of it.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm sorry. There's so many things that normally I'm like, okay, Gotham City logic, Filmation logic. I got to put on my reality hat. Okay. The ray doesn't make the car lighter. It simply attracts it. Penguin still needs the strength to lift it. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, John. Yes.
Okay. I'm not crazy. Well, I am crazy. Yeah. I'm 50 years old and I'm reviewing this
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, you're correct.
Yeah.
You're correct. Although I guess if he's screwing with the polarity and you can because, you know, when you do think about it, when you have a magnet and you have the reverse poles or whatever, and you could push a magnet around a table, maybe the same principle applies somehow, that if you angle it in a certain way, you can get it to lift off the ground.
Right.
I don't know. I'm trying.
Maybe. Well, Gordon calls in the dynamic duo, and we get a reverse R shot in this little quick scene.
Yes. Drink, everyone. Drink.
Drink time. But I love this. Penguin sets up a prop dummy of himself in an umbrella.
Yes.
I like this whole little thing because then the duo arrive, and as Robin tries to snag him, the prop, with the Batarang, Penguin shoots it out of his hand with the ray gun.
Yes. Yeah. This is also one of those things that this is like backyard playing time. You know, this is the kind of thing that when you were playing Batman or with your Migos, and like you would have like Batman and Robin capture the Penguin or something, and then it's like, no, it's not the real Penguin, it's a dummy. You know, Anyway, it's fun. Yeah, I like it.
So then Batman puts Robin. Now, this is like something we might do as kids too, not thinking. He puts him on the Batapult. He angles him and launches him after the prop Penguin in the umbrella.
Yeah, it's so awkward too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like also that they change things from one episode to the next. Instead of it being the Batapulse where they shoot right out of their seats.
Which they could have done.
Which they easily could have done.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't. I don't know, who knows why they didn't. But instead they lay him basically on what looks like kind of a platform or a mattress, and he shoots him into the air. Here, kid. Here, this is where child protective protective services gets involved, Batman. You're taking a teenager and you're basically saying, all right, look, I'll stay here on the ground.
Yes.
What I'm going to do is that you're going to climb up there and I'm going to shoot you into the air, and maybe without a parachute, you'll catch him.
Oh my God. And it's like, I also end up thinking of the Roadrunner and the Coyote, and the thing he just goes flying, into the opposite side and doesn't go up in the air.
Yeah, right, exactly. It slams into the ground.
Yeah.
Acme Batapulse.
Yes. Well, they both are Warner Brothers.
Yes, yeah. That's right. Well, they are now. They weren't at the time.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
But no, Robin manages to catch him, bring him down, and that's when they realize.
Wait, hold on a second there. Hold on a second. I don't know if your listeners or if you were aware that in the springtime or DC and Warner Brothers did an in-house crossover where they did a series of comics of Warner Brothers Looney Tunes characters teaming up with DC superheroes, and Batman's was Batman and Elmer Fudd.
Oh,
and it's really funny. It's really, really good. But you're right. Batman and Wile E. Coyote would be great, because think of what a great episode where Batman gets all of his new equipment from Acme, and everything goes wrong. His new utility belt, he gets all these things. He's shipped them in from Acme, through shell companies, so that he can't be traced to him. So because the way that he gets his stuff, but it's all from Acme. And I got to get on that.
Yeah.
What a great idea for a story. And everything just goes wrong.
Yeah.
For once, for Batman. Yeah, it's like those one episodes where things go wrong for Bugs Bunny. Here's one of those episodes where everything goes wrong for Batman because they got all of his equipment from Acme. Anyway, sorry. Okay. Let's continue, shall we? Yes. Yeah.
Well, the shot works. Robin captures the dummy, and they realize it's the dummy. Yeah. And I'm looking at it going, wow, Penguin missed a perfect opportunity that it could have exploded as Robin was up there.
Oh, yeah. Well, they miss opportunities all the time to just kill these guys outright, but it never,
Yeah. So Penguin gets away, and again, he steals the safe. It just floats across. Well, this one I guess I could accept because he's maybe attracting, like having it come to him.
Whatever works for you, John. Whatever works for you.
So he steals the safe. We cut back to the Batcave, and now the Batcomputer finally figures the whole thing out.
Right. It's learning.
Yes.
It's like the new Facebook chat bots that they had to shut down. It's starting to learn.
Yeah.
Batman is happy about this, but maybe he should be concerned.
You'd think, yeah. But this is what I like and we'll see this. This has layers, this story, because Batman sets a trap. He posts a story that he's going to give a lecture on the Batcomputer, and he's going to be bringing his computer tapes. This gets the Penguin thinking.
A little smoke screen to make them blind, and radar goggles to let me see.
In here is my complete Batcomputer crime file. With this, my Batcomputer can track down...
And without it, you're helpless.
I can't see.
Smoke! So far, so good. Now, everything his crime computer tells him will also show up on our Batcomputer.
He's like, okay, if you're going to do this, we're going to introduce a virus into your system, and we're going to mess with you.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I was like, wow. This is, again, where I was saying that there were certain things that were prescient. And frankly, I don't know where things stood with computers in the 60s as far as this kind of stuff goes.
Right.
But the idea of introducing a virus into a system, and as we'll get to in a second, there's another pop culture reference in here that we'll get to. But yeah, I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, this is brilliant. This is what would happen. This is a plausible. I know you're always looking for the plausible scientific explanation for things. This is a completely plausible explanation for how Batman could take down the Penguin by introducing a virus into his system to screw with it, and it's great.
Yes, except, and this was, I thought it was funny. The computer's like going, oh, something's wrong with one of the punch cards.
Right, of course. Then they go back to that kind of analog system as opposed to, but but it also recognized that there was some kind of breach. It's like a firewall.
Yeah.
It recognized it was, it's like an antivirus. It recognized something was wrong, whether it's able to do anything or not. But that's, again, the computer versus computer interplay is actually interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, because then we go back to the Batcave.
What happened? Just a circuit change, I guess. Now watch carefully for important information.
Check. Excellent, excellent. Now feed them information which will lead them to the sulfur pits and their doom.
Wilco.
They don't know where the sulfur pits are?
Well, I love the fact that there are sulfur pits in Gotham at all.
Yes, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the thing, like where, and I know I'm not the first person to mention this. Is this comedian, and I think we might have even mentioned this. Like when we were kids, how quicksand was like. We thought quicksand might be everywhere.
Yes.
Like if you ever played in the woods, you assumed that you might come upon quicksand, so you'd be like careful because of how often quicksand popped up on TV shows like Land of the Lost or cartoons. It was like, oh, quicksand, it's a thing. And of course, quicksand. Come on, but it's like that's like sulfur pits. What? There are sulfur pits in. Good to know. Good to know that the geography of Gotham City has presumably renowned sulfur pits that Batman doesn't know about.
Exactly. So that he doesn't know about, so that he and Robin are easily tricked to the area. They're knocked out. And presumably, as we come to the end of part 1, they're going to die.
Has the dynamic duo at last been conquered by the Penguin? Stay tuned for part 2 of The Crime Computer, coming up next.
Mr. Cow.
Yes?
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I don't know. I always end up biting. Ask Mr. Fox, for he's much cleverer than I.
Mr. Fox, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
Why don't you ask Mr. Turtle, for he's been around a lot longer than I. Me, I bite.
Mr. Turtle, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I never made it without biting. Ask Mr. Owl, for he is the wisest of us all.
Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
A good question. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3.
If there's anything I can't stand, it's a smart owl.
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know.
Penguin, foul, fiendish felon, has moved in on Professor Willingham Billingsley, a scientific genius whose computer has led Batman and Robin on a wild penguin chase to what appears to be their doom. But what's this monstrous thing? A prehistoric insect? It's a Professor Billingsley invention.
Oh, dear me. This'll never do.
Yeah, this is where, like I said, we're not really sure what side the professor is on.
Right.
Because he seems to be alternately being duped, alternately being in league with the Penguin, and then alternately saving Batman and Robin. And, of course, then the professor has to answer for it to the Penguin when he saves them.
Right, yeah. See, I looked at the professor at this point, similar to a character in Doctor Who called the Ronnie, which many people always said was like the female version of the Master. The Master was evil. The Ronnie was not evil, but basically what she did could be looked at as evil. But as far as she was concerned, the ends always justified the means for science.
Sure.
And
sure.
I think that's where the professor stands.
You could see that. Right? Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Because what he wants to do is he saved them because he wants to drain their knowledge so that he can feed it into the computer and they will know, it will know everything they know.
Right. Which is where it goes back to the morally ambiguous question of, it's like, what, he definitely isn't in this for good, but you're right. He definitely seems to, I think your theory makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's what the writers were going for, but certainly it makes sense. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And like you said, Penguin's not happy about it at all, but he watches. He stays back and he lets the professor do his work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because then we get to the sadistic side, though, of it, because once the professor's done, he tells Penguin, put him back out there, give him a 15-minute start, and then send your men out and hunt them.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's which is also probably why the Penguin was like, okay, well, at least you're still, you saved them, but you had a reason for it, I guess.
Right.
And again, it's like he doesn't seem to. He's certainly in league with the Penguin, at least in terms of that part of it. Sure. I mean, he may not be like out to kill Batman and Robin, but you're right. He's twisting science for his means.
Right. Exactly. And they're going to use the computer now with Batman and Robin's memories to help them figure out how Batman and Robin would react.
Right.
It's a great idea, except for one then small problem. The computer doesn't seem to immediately anticipate that the two are going to jump the first hunting party.
No. Well, it's not infallible.
No. And everybody take a drink, because as Robin's jumping down, there's a reverse R.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they managed to get hold of a radio, which would allow them to track Penguin's men's movements as he's relaying instructions to them. But the computer does figure that out.
Right.
So Penguin gives the orders to use. He's going to send his orders by flare signal.
Right. Yeah. The mix between, analog and high tech and all of that, it's of its time. They're playing with ideas here that were in the zeitgeist. But again, you're still dealing with a largely, almost completely analog world. So there are certain things that are going to seem low tech by comparison today, whereas today wouldn't necessarily be the case.
Right. Now we cut to Alfred, who, again, your son would love this because now he's worried. So he's like, I've got to find out what's going on because they haven't shown up for a while. And he's like, to the Batcomputer. And again, like in the last episode, he slowly walks off.
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
Cut back to the hunt.
Marvelous! The cowled kooks are heading right for the crocodile's lair.
Looks like a pathway over here, Batman.
A crocodile that not only roars, but also it goes up to Robin and just gives him a slap with his tail.
Yeah.
He doesn't try to eat him. It doesn't try to just slap.
Yeah.
It just knocks Robin silly, which is actually very funny.
Batman, help!
The sad part is those crocodiles are more real than the ones King Tut had for Robin.
Yes.
And Batman takes out two more of Penguin's men.
Batman, duck!
By knocking down some beehives and sending them running.
Yeah. Bees! And then they run in separate directions.
Yeah.
Bees!
Oh. Come, Robin. Time for us to attack.
Now, Alfred learns that they're at the marsh, so he takes off for the Batboat again, very slowly.
Alfred in the Batboat, though. First off, I love the design of the Batboat.
Yes.
I love the Filmation design of the Batboat. But also just Alfred. We had Alfred in the Batcomputer. Now we got Alfred in the Batboat.
Yep.
Outstanding. Love it.
And he's got better control of this.
Yes.
Maybe Batman taught him how to, drive the vehicles in the meantime.
Right.
After the helicopter.
That's it. He's always like, we got to. I'll teach you, Alfred. I'll teach you.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Very good, sir.
Very good, sir. So the two make it to Penguin's lair, and they're captured by a ray that freezes them in place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I love this. The professor, again, see, this is where we see this switching thing. He's just happy it works. So he's walking off, but Penguin's like, no, give me the gun. I'm going to finish them off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he, he's going to push them into a vat of hot acid, but Batman tries to goad him into unmasking them first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And also and not to be like gross or weird, but when you look at the animation of this, Batman's boobs are sagging. The drawing is so weird and so wonky that the lines for his chest are basically at his navel. It looks really weird. So anyway, just pointing that out.
You clever creep. You want me to come close enough so you could grab me.
Ask me. Batman's identity is recorded in my memory bank.
Marvelous. Who is Batman?
Batman's identity is I have been tricked with a self-destruct card.
No, not my baby! My life's work!
It's going to explode! Must get out of here!
2 plus 2 is 22. The sum of the 4 sides of a triangle is CAT.
It's too late, Professor. Come on, hurry.
I'm finished.
So you see, Professor, we planted that secret card hoping that the Penguin would ask the computer our secret identities.
And that would make the computer destroy itself. Brilliant! Look down there!
This is interesting because we've only got so much time left. We got to cut to the chase. Alfred manages to catch Penguin, but he does it off screen.
That Alfred, he never fails to amaze me.
He does it off screen. He does it as Alfred.
Yeah. In the Batboat.
In the Batboat.
Yeah.
And when Batman has got the professor with him, and we're not even clear what's happening to the professor. Is he on his way to prison? Is he going to be whatever? But they're sitting in the professor, and while the professor is sitting there, after all of this attempt to hide their identities, Batman doesn't turn. He says to Robin, "Good old Alfred."
Yes.
Wait a minute. So Bruce Wayne's famous butler, Alfred, because he's everybody knows Bruce Wayne's butler because when everybody knows the names of the help of the rich people in society.
Yeah.
So Alfred is not only driving, and also if you look closely, Alfred isn't just driving, but he's looking back at the Penguin. As he's driving with the Batboat, he's actually looking back at the Penguin. Showing his face. So Bruce Wayne's butler is showing the Penguin his face, and Batman is actually referring to him by name, while the professor, and of course, what was their undoing was when they were trying to figure out who Batman was, and yet they're as my son said, "You're not your smartest move, Batman."
No, not at all, but. Satisfying ending just the same.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, the whole thing is fun. And I did like the fact that it was a singular villain.
Yes.
I mean, even though you have the professor, but it's a Penguin episode. And you don't generally, they started off that way with single villain episodes, but it moved very quickly into team up after team up after team up, which even in the world of Filmation feels a little contrived after a while. I understand why they do it, but from a storytelling perspective, it doesn't always make a lot of sense. It was nice to see just a simple Penguin episode, even if I still can't get past his voice.
Yeah.
Or the voice is actually okay. It's the laugh that I have an issue with. But it's a pretty good episode.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. I'd say the only thing and I mentioned it briefly, I would have liked a little more computer versus computer, but it still is a great episode. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think you liked it more. I thought it was good. I wouldn't say great. I think you liked it more than I did, but I still thought it was entertaining. I also think, again, our own desires, the computer versus computer. But even for the time and for what it was, and in the context of the episode itself, it was an awful lot.
Mm. Yeah, you know what it is. For me, it really tickled my childhood because as a kid, I was fascinated with computers. I loved the Star Trek episodes when Kirk would outsmart the computer, or I loved robots. I loved the robot from Lost in Space. As a fourth grade, I still remember I made my own robot. I had the head, arms. I had this huge, and it was standing. It was about as tall as I was because I put this thing together from all sorts of cardboard. And the big body part, I cut out a window. I put, paper towel holders in between, and on the paper towel holders, I put like the old concentration Roll-O-Matic, and I had my own pictures. So I'd be like, "Okay, robot, I want to watch this TV show," and I would scroll, and it would be a picture I drew, and I just sit there staring at.
Oh, that's great.
This was so to me, seeing these computers, all of a sudden I was a kid again, and I was getting off on their battle of wits.
Yeah, that's the thing about these. I mean, that's great, John. That's really, I love that. But that's also what these cartoons and the show, and the Batman 66 itself. But these cartoons also, they do play to, like I was referring to the thing where it's like a backyard kind of playtime kind of idea for part of the story. We do see these things that excited us as kids. You did see, like for me, like I always get excited whenever I see as much as I love the Batmobile, when I would see the Batboat, or I'd see the Batcopter, I'd see a different vehicle, something that gives, the larger scope of things. And you're right, it does press those buttons of the things that excited you when you were a kid. And so, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. If you were really into that aspect of it, with all of these stories, it only goes to follow that's how you would react. So cool. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Now
that's what's lovely about these episodes is that they really do take you back.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. I mean, some of them might leave you cold, and other ones you're just suddenly sitting there and you're 7 years old again.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't remember this one at all, but I got to say, and we said it at the top of the show, I really enjoyed it. It's The Great Scarecrow Scare, written by Bill Butler.
Right.
I forget. I don't think Butler's done anything yet. I think.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because we're just about halfway through now.
Right.
This is interesting because now we finally get to the Scarecrow. We've had 5 villains so far: Joker, Penguin, Riddler, Catwoman, and Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had any other villains now until Scarecrow. And the Scarecrow is an interesting choice, because we know that the influence that the show, the 66 show had on this show, that they didn't go, obviously in retrospect anyway, obviously they weren't going to go with Egghead or King Tut or any of those guys, presumably because of rights issues or what have you. But if they were going to go with a comic book film, they could have gone with Mad Hatter. They could have done something like that. But they go to Scarecrow, who was never on the TV show,
right,
and was only recently reintroduced in comics. The Scarecrow was one of those Golden Age villains who had pretty much been dormant for a long time and had only relatively recently, when this show was being made, in 1968, I'd have to look it up to be sure, but I think it had only been about a year earlier that the Scarecrow came back in the comics. And so they bring him back here, and it's actually a different version of the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow, well, I start off with the recap, and we can get into that.
Okay.
The annual Gotham City Halloween Ball, where a valuable painting is to be auctioned for charity. But what's this? Batman and Robin socializing with the Scarecrow, a known criminal?
Holy masquerade, it's Commissioner Gordon.
I didn't mean to startle you two, but the costume service delivered the Scarecrow outfit by mistake.
For a minute there, I thought the Scarecrow had come to steal the painting.
Excuse me, gentlemen. I must take a phone call.
Quietly, Batgirl, alias Barbara Gordon, follows her father. And a lucky thing, too.
Let go, you scoundrels!
You heard the commissioner!
She tries to stop it. We get a quick kick from her, one of the guys, but she's captured.
Take this bat filly to the car! I have plans for her. Stuff this top cop in a closet.
By these eggs. A little gas comes out.
While I masquerade as the top cop masquerading as me. Ladies and gents, we are here in the name of the noblest of all sentiments, charity. Behold this invaluable painting.
He's really great with that Scarecrow act. Even got the voice down pat.
Of that humble man, the farmer, tiller of the soil.
Yes, he's almost too good. If I didn't know...
Going, gone! The painting goes to my favorite charity, me, the Scarecrow.
Hit the deck, Robin.
Now, here's the first indication that this is a different version of the Scarecrow than we're used to seeing.
Right.
And by the way, the Scarecrow's return was in Batman number 189, which is cover dated February 1967, which is my birth month. Oh. So this was at least cover dated now, which meant it probably came out in December 66 or maybe November of 66. I'd have to look that up, but I'm not going to bother. Anyway, so really for what we're talking about, the Scarecrow had only been back for a little while. But not only does this Scarecrow look different than the Scarecrow of the comic books. He's stylized version. It's basically the same, but the color scheme is a little different. The other Scarecrow is usually, or at least at the time, was usually shown to be kind of a brown or a dark tan head to toe. Here they've got him in different colors. But he gets her with this egg thing. And I thought that's kind of a strange thing for the – why an egg? I was like, what? I don't get it. I was like, all right, well, we'll see how this plays out. Also, though, I have to say it's nice to see Batgirl back because we haven't seen her in a few episodes. So it's nice that she's returned, even though this is going to be a single-parter. It was like, oh, good, Batgirl's back. But anyway, continue.
Well, she's back, and I'll get into this in a little while. I'm starting to get frustrated with her.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't come out well in this episode.
And about the egg, I wouldn't mind it if that had fear gas in it.
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So
okay.
All right. So here's the thing. We'll go with the recap and then. Yeah,
okay. So anyway, he makes his escape by using an exploding pumpkin, throwing it at Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Now,
right. I guess he got that from the Green Goblin.
I guess. Yeah. Maybe they were watching the Spider-Man 67 cartoon.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So
another great one.
Yeah, there you go. So Batman knows they can find Batgirl via her transmitter as long as she turns it on and sends out the signal. Scarecrow, back at his hideout, wants her to use it to transmit a message that Scarecrow's going to rob the first store, when in reality he's going to rob the farmer's market instead. She taps out the message he wants, but Batman notices, and I like this, that she drags certain parts of the transmission of certain letters, and when he spells it out, he realizes it's the farmer's market.
Yeah, it's good. This is her being clever, and this is her being sharp. This is, Batgirl. They didn't quite have the pros of Batgirl in Filmation is one, she looks good. Okay, yeah. She's drawn very well, not to be creepy or anything, but she looks good. She's well drawn, and then she has a good voice. Jane Webb's voice is good for Batgirl, not good for Catwoman, perfect for Batgirl. It's the package is really good. They didn't have a handle on her abilities. They struggled with that very sexist, is she a help or is she a hindrance even though she's trying to help, because she's just not as good as Batman and Robin because she's Batgirl. Yeah. And Batman is always very patient with her. But we've seen this come up before on the TV. Why do I always say the TV show? Because they're both TV shows. On 66, one of the things that made Batgirl great, Yvonne Craig's Batgirl, is that she was the smartest person in the room. Yeah, she was always a step ahead, or at the very least was Batman's equal. Yep. And one of her strengths, one of her great abilities, was that she was always underestimated. That because she was a woman and she was a girl crime fighter, that she was able to use that to her advantage. And she would frequently make reference like, oh, well, it's just a woman's intuition, Batman. That was always played for laughs. There was always something really subversive about all of that. Here, not so much. So here, you see this a couple of times in this episode where she kind of screws it up. And it actually she becomes a drag, pardon the pun, on the operation. Although here she's very clever and is able to get away, send a coded message to Batman.
Well, that's the thing. It's almost like she's clever when the plot requires it, and she's careless or clumsy when the plot requires it. Right.
And that happens a little bit with Robin, but that's played off more of the fact that he's callow and young and he's learning and he's the sidekick. Here, the subtext seems to be because she's a girl. Yeah. And, that practically comes up in an earlier episode. It's never really stated here, but it certainly feels like that's part of the message.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Batman and Robin make it to the farmer's market.
Come on, men! Let's harvest the lettuce!
A bat fight breaks out, and it's a pretty lengthy one there.
Have some fruit salad.
But it's ended when Scarecrow manages to sort of take down the two a moment with a knockdown pile of crates.
When I say go, rush them. Duck, quick!
Let's scamper, men!
Now we'll never find Batgirl.
My hunch says she's tucked away in a country retreat, which means we'll need the Batcopter. Come on.
And you're right. It does seem to go on for all, which is good though. It's a good action-packed sequence. There's a good fight out of it. It's really, it's a even on the 66 show, certain bat fights were over in a second. Some of them went on, and they would go, and it's entertaining. I'm not going to say they went on to the point of being boring. It was always fun.
Yeah.
But you're right. This one goes on, and they get a lot of props in there. But here's where it's interesting that he chooses to steal from a farmer's market, which isn't like your farmer's market that you see in a downtown of a it's like basically like Fulton Street Fish Market, or like a place where they bring in all the goods for presumably to feed Gotham. But this is where it started to really hit me that this Scarecrow is not our Scarecrow that we're accustomed to. No. Fear is not his shtick at all.
No.
His whole shtick is farming.
Yeah.
And harvesting.
Yep.
And that's everything. That's where the egg came in and the pumpkin came in, is that he's a scarecrow in the sense that farmers use scarecrows, so that's his thing. Not that scarecrows are about fear and are supposed to scare, so the whole reason for, his whole gimmick is completely different. Yep. So, and my son and I were speculating, is it because the idea of fear was too scary for kids? And I'm thinking, no, because they easily could have just made Batman and Robin go, oh, I'm frightened of you. And it didn't have to be scary in and of itself. And let's not forget, right around this time, Scooby-Doo was coming around also. So, and kids like to be scared.
Yeah.
So it's just, did they misunderstand the nature of the character? Was it because they didn't want to go through the whole fear gas, fear toxin idea, or what? I'm not entirely clear. But even to the Scarecrow's voice, he doesn't have – I always assumed that the Scarecrow had a haunting voice or something like that. But here he's really shrieky, and it doesn't fit the character. So even though he looks kind of okay, I don't really like his mask.
Yeah.
His whole gimmick, his whole shtick is completely separate from what we're accustomed to in the comic books and in later multimedia incarnations.
Right. And because of that, Batman is able to determine that Scarecrow must be hiding out in the farming area of Gotham.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because it's all that's the whole thing, is that it's all about farming.
Yeah. So they're going to take the Batcopter and search the area and see if they can find the hideout. Now, it's ironic because you say he doesn't use fear, but here's Batgirl using the goons' scare, like their fear, by having a real bat with the light shining on it and creating the shadow of the bat. And it scares
I thought
them.
that too.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe, is it okay for the bad guys to be scared but not the good guys? Or am I just overthinking this, and that the writer just misunderstood the nature of the character, or decided to do maybe he does fear, but I'd prefer to do this story instead and make him a farmer villain.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but and it's actually kind of a neat image too, because she wakes up the bat, but then you see the bat silhouette flying over these guys, and it's neat. It's really cool looking.
It is. Yeah, it was a nice piece of animation.
Yeah, and it's the Batman logo too. It's not even just like it's not. It doesn't look like a flying bat. It's the logo flying over, and so it works. It's really cool.
Yeah. So she escapes. She manages to jump onto a thresher machine and use it to plow out in the field an SOS signal.
Yeah. That's good.
I like that. But she's recaptured.
Yes, very quickly. Yeah.
But you know what? It's all she needs. The Batcopter's led, because she probably knew she wasn't going to get far.
Sure.
Yeah. Again, now she's smart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Capable, smart. Yeah. Everything's good.
Everything's good. Yeah. So
that's the electric eye alarm.
The Caped Crusaders, ready the net.
But Batgirl again, smart.
Maybe we've got the wrong place. Watch it, Robin.
Alert them by knocking over a bale of hay. A bat fight breaks out.
These fellas seem hot under the collar, Batman.
Much obliged, chum.
And I love this because there's one point in the fight, Batgirl tied up, rolls herself from the top of the loft onto two of the thugs, knocking them out.
Gotcha, boy, Blunder!
Thanks, Batman.
Come on, Robin needs help.
Here, Batman. Oh, Batman!
Ah! Thanks, Batgirl. I couldn't have done better myself.
There are a few of those little moments during this fight, but yeah, it is pretty funny.
It's funny, but it's also just, I'm thinking, you know, she's actually doing some capable things. She's, you know, being smart. And then all of a sudden, here we go. Oh, let me pick up this, you know, bowl of eggs. And she drops them.
Yeah, right. It screws everything up. Yeah, she's not consistent.
No.
And especially in screwing up something that obvious. And when she grabbed the bowl, I thought this isn't going to end well. I'm like, something's going to go wrong here. Yeah, because I could see it a mile away, and sure enough.
And you may get mad at me about this because I know how you feel about this character. Suddenly, and I wrote this in my notes, is Batgirl the Batmite for this series?
Oh, dude, Batmite. No, she's not No, because she's not annoying, you know?
No, she's not. But I keep getting, like, there she is again going, I'm sorry, Batman. You know,
yeah,
like
when she said that, I was like, we still have another half of the series to go. So we're going to track the ups and downs of Batgirl, but I wouldn't go quite that far because Batmite was played strictly for laughs and to be that mascot-y kind of character. I really do think that this had to do, I'll call it what it is. I think it's sexism. I think that these were guys who either felt this way or assumed, it's either overt sexism or casual sexism. There's kind of like this, she's capable, but she keeps screwing up too. And I think, I just think that was part and parcel of the way women were looked at in the workforce and in society at the time. Look, when you go back and watch any of these shows, the Brady Bunch is a great example of the battle of the sexes. And, it gives you a really good, if it's a funhouse version of it, but it does give you a sense of what was going on culturally at the time when you watch a lot of these shows, because they are reflective of the worlds in which they were made. Mm. So again, I don't want to overthink it or put too fine a point on it, but I can't help but think that that's what was really in play here. And yes, I do hate Batman.
Yes. So this was the weird thing, though. He places Batman and Batgirl in a room, and he puts Robin in the Thresher.
Yes.
The moving Thresher.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, and makes reference to him getting a spanking.
Yes, well.
really creepy.
I know.
That was what?
And the way he said it, too.
Yeah, I know. You mean getting a threshing, but it doesn't mean you're going to get a spanking. Yeah. Ew. Dude, no. And not only does he put Batgirl in, and presumably it was because he could only fit one of them in the Thresher at a time.
Right.
And so he had to hold the other. But he puts him in there with all these things, including an arrow. Yes. All these things that they can need to escape or to it's. But what's also great is that, okay, so Robin's on the Thresher, Robin the boy hostage, and you have, Batman and Batgirl, and Batman knows, we only have one shot at this. But what's great is that he rigs this thing up off camera, and his hand just keeps coming across the screen, picking things up. It's kind of funny animation.
He MacGyvers.
Yeah, right. He MacGyvers, but it's great. So he shoots the thing, the arrow, with like kind of a slingshot thing that he makes, and it lands into the gears perfectly, but also with such force and such power and such strength that it tears the door off.
Yes.
Lets them out, and the door lands in a way that blocks Robin from the Thresher.
Yep.
It's almost as good as when he threw the yardarm and disabled Mr. Freeze's submarine in the last episode that we talked about.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not quite super strength, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Get him! Cut them down!
Another bat fight quickly breaks out.
Yep.
Scarecrow tries to escape in a balloon, which Batman brings down with a pitchfork.
Right.
That was cool.
Yeah.
And
he's getting away. Oh no, he's not.
We end with another wah-wah bat taunt.
Yes, a great bat taunt where the Scarecrow is caught in a tree because the balloon landed in the tree.
Great shot, Batman.
Should we take him down, Batman?
I don't know. Since this is a cornfield, maybe he's finally found his true calling. Scaring crows.
is all caught up in there, and they're just making fun of him, which is great.
Yeah.
But also making a reference to actually scaring things for once.
Right.
Because it talks about scaring crows. This is the job you really were meant to have. But yeah, you get your classic patented bat taunt to finish this one off.
Yeah. But you know what? Despite the change, I still liked it.
I liked it because it was different.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that we got a different villain in the mix. And I like that, that Batgirl is back. It was nice to see her again. I mean, even with the way that they show her to be sometimes, I still always like having her around. I always like it when she's on the show. I always think that adds something. And, it's just different. It was something that was different than what we've been seeing. And as we're starting to head into the second half of the series, we're going to see them do more things that broaden this world. We're going to start to see more different characters. They're not doing the same old. And so we're kind of hitting kind of a changing point in the series as far as that goes. And it's really welcome because it does keep things fresh and it kept things interesting as the series goes on.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So another two good ones in the book.
Yeah. Yep.
As we wrap things up here, Dan, 13th Dimension. What's up?
Yeah. Well, we as always, we cover comic books and TV and movies and whatever that are both yesterday and today, and always doing a lot of Batman and Batman 66. We did a whole lot for the first half of this year. We did a whole lot on Funko's Batman 66 figures and the Batmobile and all of that. So it's only a matter of time before the second wave gets announced.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of information about that on the site in terms of what's expected. And of course we had, the episode here on the Batcave podcast where we had Reese O'Brien, the senior designer. So a lot more Batman 66 to come on that front, plus on the Factory Entertainment Batcave. Plus we have the Batman versus Two-Face movie to look forward to. And so there's still a lot more Batman to come, even beyond what we're talking about here. Plus, we do everything else as well. So it's we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and the website is 13thdimension.com. And as you like to point out, it's 13thdimension.com. So come pay us a visit.
Yep, absolutely. Dan, once again, thanks again for doing this.
Oh, thanks, John. Having a great time.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Batcave podcast. Tune in next time. Catwoman. We've got another team up. Not a team up, actually. Catwoman's looking to steal some jewels that the Joker is after as well.
Aha.
Yeah. But it gets even better. Our one-part story, we've got another new villain in the form of Dollman.
Yeah. So we're really starting to branch out.
We're really starting to branch out. I'm looking forward to this just because, like you say, even with the Scarecrow, even though they didn't do it exactly the way we expected it, it was different, so it made it interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. So, looking forward to that. Looking forward to you all tuning in next time for the Batcave podcast. Until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, citizens, Dan, take care.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a bat phone, but you can contact the Batcave podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. Or through iTunes. The Batcave podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave podcast.